Welcome to today's webinar presented by Software Technology Group. Our commitment at STG is to facilitate the transformation of businesses and technology organizations through innovation and optimization. We are excited to have you as part of our audience. Our goal for this webinar is to provide valuable insights and ignite ideas that can benefit your organization. Thank you once again for joining us.
Hello, welcome to today's webinar. My name is Mel Tingey. I am the Chief Technology and Strategy Officer for Software Technology Group. We are a software consulting firm located in Salt Lake City, Utah, serving clients all throughout the United States. For today's webinar, the topic is UX. And the focus we're going to go into today covers a couple different areas of the UX world. I have with me today our senior UX consultant, Jared Wright. Absolutely thrilled to have Jared with us today. As I have gotten to know Jared and prepared for today's webinar, I've been absolutely impressed with Jared's background and experience in the world of UX. Both his ability to practice the trade, but also his ability to come in and do assessments and audits and accessibility reviews that are just absolutely illuminating, that give you a perspective of your website, your applications through a knowledge base that is just absolutely amazing. By way of introduction, just to help you get to know Jared a little bit more, 25 years of experience in the UX world. He's been with STG for 4 years and has a number of certifications and pretty advanced training. I'll let him introduce or talk a little bit more about where that has happened. And so I'll let him kind of introduce himself a little bit more, and then I know he's going to jump into kind of a brief history of UX. So welcome, Jared. We're absolutely thrilled to have you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Mel.
Yeah.
Good to see you again, and good to be with everyone here. I love UX. I'm just going to jump into echoing one of my favorite films, Everything All at Once, All the Time, or whatever the title of that movie was, right?
Yeah.
But to parallel that, UX or user experience is literally everything, everywhere, all the time. Okay, it's in everything that we do, whether we're ordering something on Amazon, booking airline flights, buying a product in the supermarket, or going to the movies. Everything that we do, every single thing we do every day is influenced by user experience. And, my kids, unfortunately, to their detriment, they call me out on this all the time. And I've trained them well now. So when they experience something that isn't operating the way that it should or as smoothly as it should, the first things out of their mouth are, "This is bad UX, Dad. This is bad UX."
That's awesome.
So I've attuned them to optimizing our life in every aspect that we can. I have gotten some certifications throughout my career. I've been in UX for over 25 years. I got certified e-commerce UX professional with Baymard Institute. I would say humbly but most accurately that if there were two behemoth gorillas in the UX research field, it would be Nielsen Norman Group and it would be Baymard. And we're going to cover a little more detail of that here in a bit. A lot of respect to those organizations. I'm certified dynamic in UX design usability, user research methodologies and best practices. We're going to get into some best practices here, namely as it relates to UX audits that we provide as a service offering for STG, for our clients, for both startups and legacy companies that have teams of UXers. That's a lot of fun for us. I also am an expert in ADA compliance standards, and we're going to talk about some of the opportunities and pitfalls that result from adhering and or violating some of those standards, and then some of our UX audit services, some examples. I've got some clients we're going to show.
Very cool.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, let's jump in.
You want me to jump in?
Yeah.
Well, let's take a broad look at a brief history of UX.
Okay.
And I'm going to attribute a great article by Emily Stevens at Career Foundry. She did a lot of deep dives on the fascinating history of UX, a definitive timeline. And the first one that I want to say, we could authoritatively say that the origin of UX began about 4,000 years ago. Okay, with feng shui. And for those who aren't familiar with feng shui, that's the spatial arrangement of objects in relation to the flow of energy, the qi. And in practice, feng shui is all about arranging your surroundings in the most optimal and harmonious or user-friendly way. And I don't know if you've ever attended a parade of home.
I have.
Through Utah or Utah Valley, right? And honestly, I don't know if other states do this or if it's unique to Utah. I'm sure other states must do parade homes. But in all the time I've lived here, I've been going to parade homes for over 20 years, okay? And I marvel at a term that I've now coined called the McMansion, okay? It's where Utahns have a lot of money and no taste. And so they buy a huge house that is not designed well at all, okay? They might even have a really great builder. But what we're talking about is the flow of the home from one room to the next. And for example, one of feng shui's major violations is where energy flows from the front door all the way out to the back door. And you'll see this when you go to a house and you can see through the glass front door all the way through the house, all the way out the backyard, through the windows, all the way out. Okay? That ideology was there's no way that the home is capturing the energy in the home through privacy and walls and spatial arrangements. So anyway, feng shui is one of those cool, kind of fun little things. We need more architects and designers that adhere to some of those principles, especially in Utah. But next, we're going to go 500 BC, and those are the ancient Greeks. And Greek civilizations designed their tools and their workplaces based on ergonomic principles. In fact, it was Hippocrates who wrote a thesis on how surgeons were to arrange their surgical instruments so that they could easily access them and that they weren't obstructed by doing their work. Okay, and the International Ergonomics Institute stated that methods to design and optimize human well-being and overall system performance, that's optimization. That's one of the origins of user experience. So now we're going to jump to the 1900s with a specific person, Frederick Winslow Taylor. He came from a wealthy family. He was going to go become a lawyer like his father. He passed the Harvard entrance exam with honors. But he had fading eyesight because of all of his night studies. So he had to switch gears. He couldn't become an attorney. So he went to a friend of the family and got into manufacturing and became one of the most influential process engineers or an industrial engineer in history. And he wrote this book, The Principles of Scientific Management. All of his research was very empirical. And this was kind of the origin of where user research derived. My background was actually in graphics. I went to school, I got my Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in graphic design. And back in the day, we were very influenced by, what was in the annual magazines, Graphice and Communication Arts and print magazines, right? We were trying to get our designs entered into these annual review magazines in order to win awards and stuff. And it was all very trendy based. What were the best typefaces that we could use and the best colors and, and how could we push the rules and break the rules? It was trendy based. And there was no research involved. There was very little research. We would design something and hope it worked, okay? And the field of user research is now so much more robust. It's more research-driven. It's empirical. And Frederick Winslow Taylor kind of pioneered that. We want to jump into now 1940s with Toyota. Toyota, wow. Their system was based on respect for people. And much attention was paid to creating the optimal working environment. Not only that human input was considered crucial, it was actively encouraged. In fact, they would place pull strings or buttons throughout the assembly line. And if any worker, for any reason, knew that there was something wrong or that they could optimize something in a better way, they could stop the entire assembly line and make that correction. It's how humans interact with machines. They pioneered that piece. In fact, I don't know if you're familiar with FastCap or Paul Akers. Have you ever heard of him?
I'm not.
He runs a company in Washington. It's called FastCap. And he pioneered, well, he wasn't a pioneer, but he's definitely brought to light through the US the Japanese principle of Kaizen, which is translated continuous improvement, Kaizen, and the lean philosophy. And so he went to Japan and studied with Toyota in order to derive his principles and his philosophies with his company, FastCap, which designs and manufactures carpentry tools that carpenters use, to build homes and cabinets and all kinds of stuff. His tools are pretty amazing, and you can see if anyone goes to his little plug for his website, you'll see how much work they've gone into optimizing their flow processes. Everyone at his company their title is a process engineer, which is just another way of saying you're a UX designer. Okay.
Very cool.
It's how do you optimize? He challenges all of his workers every day. How can you improve what you do by 2 seconds every day? Just 2 seconds. What could you do? So just imagine everything whether you're in the kitchen and you're doing your dishes, okay, or you're unloading the dishwasher, okay. How could you improve that process by 2 seconds? It's a fun challenge, and I do that with my kids.
Mindset.
Yeah, it's fun.
Cool.
But that all came from the Kaizen and the optimizations that Toyota brought in. Next, we're going to jump into 1955. This is Henry Dreyfuss. He was renowned for designing and improving the usability of some of the most iconic products that we have today. The typewriter, the Quiet Deluxe model, right? The Hoover vacuum. He worked with American Airlines. He's worked with John Deere. He was one of the original industrial designers, and then he also published a book. It was the International Graphic Symbols book, and so he was also a graphic designer and an industrial designer, and his methodology was all about how can we make products easy on the eye, easy on the hand, safer, more efficient to manufacture and or repair. And so he pioneered all of those elements, and that had a great influence on how user experience, UX, has evolved even today. If we jump to 1966, we now get into Walt Disney and the Imagineering. His Imagineers have over 300 patents, by the way. Did you know that?
I did not know that. That is fascinating.
Over 300 patents. And to jump back even to Frederick Winslow Taylor, he actually made his fortune at Bethlehem Steel, optimizing the tungsten steel process. So most of the tools that we use in our garages, right, are tempered with tungsten steel. Okay, that whole process he patented, and at the time in the 1920s, he was granted $100,000 for that patent, which today would be about $3.5 million. He made a fortune.
Wow.
Just off of that patent.
That's
okay,
fascinating.
And so have Imagineers. Okay, over 300 patents ranging everything from audio visual to robotics to fiber optics. Okay. Wow. The entertainment industry, riding systems. Think about it. When was the last time you went to a theme park?
That's a couple years ago, Disneyland.
Yeah, Disneyland. Okay, so when you went, Mel, did you use the Fast Pass system?
Oh yeah.
Okay, that was invented by Imagineers, and that's one of the great innovations to going to theme parks.
Bypass the long line. Wow.
But think about just that one innovation. Okay, how did that influence your user experience at Disneyland?
It made me feel better about, I mean, I obviously had to pay extra, so I didn't like that, but at least it saved me some time. And as I walked past the long lines, I was like, oh, I'm glad they had this option.
Yeah. Yeah. So Walt Disney always said, Disneyland will never be finished as long as there's an imagination left on the earth. And so he was definitely influential in the 1960s, true stroke of genius. If we jump to the 1970s, we've got Xerox and the Palo Alto Research Center, PARC, okay, which was hugely influential in some of the most breakthrough technologies that we still use today in all of our iPhones and our graphic user interface on our computers. Okay, the mouse, all of that came out of Xerox's PARC Research Center, and that influenced, of course, iPod, iPhone, and they coined the term UX design. They wanted to be architects of information. And one of the owners of Xerox was like, this is what I want. And some of his employees were like, then we have to have a lab. And they pulled in some of the most prolific scientists throughout the world to work at PARC. Wow. And develop some of the most incredible technologies we still have today. And these definitely have influenced UX throughout history. We're escalating now, okay? It's jumping fast from 4000 BC, right? We get to 1905, we've got Donald Norman, who worked for Apple. He was a cognitive scientist, and in the early 90s, he was a user experience architect. He was the first to actually have that title. And he came up with the term user experience design, which we love to use now. All aspects of a person's experience with a system, industrial design, graphics, the interface, the physical interactions, and the manual. He wrote a book, The Psychology of Everyday Things, and he defined affordances, signifiers, feedback. All of this has to do with these are fun little things as especially on the web, with the internet, with everything that we use every day, even driving our car. Okay, when was the last time you bought a new car?
It's been a couple of years.
Okay, that's how long you've had your Tesla? Mm-hmm. Okay, we're fellow Tesla owners, okay? I love my Tesla.
I love my Tesla.
I'm unabashedly, I'm unapologetic about that.
Yep.
So when you get into your car, let's say you're shopping for your car. You get into a car, well, that's one brand, you test drive it, you get into another car and you test drive that. Are you having to do the seatbelt in a different way? Are the wipers on the car in a different spot?
So seatbelts obviously uniform. But there's so many things that are not.
Okay, like
They're-
what?
Well, like, whether the windshield wiper is on the left or right.
Okay.
Turning on the lights, it might be on the knob or it might be a handle.
Yep. Okay.
There's a couple things you kind of have to orient yourself.
Okay.
But most things are pretty intuitive, of course.
And it has to be. Okay, it has to be intuitive, and the more and more we evolve, I'm going to introduce this term, the more conventional that behavior becomes. So especially with e-commerce and with web, we're looking at how are the conventions influencing what now should then be a best practice. What are your users accustomed to using so much that if it's different than that, then it creates an obstacle. It creates a friction point that inhibits their ability to go from point A to point B, or to convert in an e-commerce case. Okay, you want them to get to the product, make a decision, an informed decision, get to the cart and make the sale. There are web conventions that have been established through these best practices over hundreds of thousands of usability testing sessions that establish those things, and that's kind of what Donald Norman was influential there too.
Very cool.
And then, starting in 2018 or thereabouts, we now are moving into the future of UX. Now, that's going to involve AI, augmented reality, VR, familiar mental models, and inclusive design, which is where ADA, we're going to talk about that, custom 3D, cross platforms, and that's really where the fun begins. Do you have any kids that have, Mel, I'm asking a personal question, any the VR headsets?
No, in fact, we've been talking about the new Apple Pro Vision or Vision Pro or what it's called.
That's right.
It's fascinating, just seeing the reviews and seeing how people are using it. I mean,
Have you gotten a demo of it yet?
I have not yet.
Okay, so I have a colleague who actually teaches at the U, and he teaches VR. And of course, so he has to have this new, Vision Pro. And he's like, Jared, this is a game changer. Like, it just literally changes everything. So the UX is now influencing the virtual world, right? It influences the gaming world, which, my kids do a lot of. So
that's cool.
Yeah, it's fun.
That's cool. That's great. I really appreciate you taking a few minutes and walking down kind of the history and whatnot. I love UX. As an engineer, it's kind of the common language that we use that both the business and engineering can speak together. Mm-hmm. There are definitely activities that we do within engineering that simply are engineering related. The back end infrastructure, things like that. That often the business needs to just simply trust that we understand how to architect things properly. But when we talk functionality and the features that are built into systems, a website and the overall flow of a website, it's really UX that creates that common language. It allows us to work together in ways that we say, yes, some of that, less of this, none of that. That's how we center on that is the requirement. That is what we want to have built. So, UX is a big deal in software development. Yeah. So it's
and when Donald Norman early on, he's actually one of the co-founders of Nielsen Norman Group with Jacob Nielsen, one of the gorillas again in the UX research industry. He kind of controversially said that that research was not going to be as impactful as what technologists actually do. That the real innovations were with technologists, okay? And, you come from that background. You're actually, getting your fingers dirty, so to speak, coding, all this stuff in order to organize this. And as a researcher or as a designer, he kind of controversially mentioned, the research isn't going to really do much. Well, I will kick back on that, and he can disagree. That's fine. The research does help us establish how users, without user feedback, okay, we're missing a critical component to the life cycle of any product. So we know that businesses that embrace design generate 32% more revenue and 56% more shareholder returns. Now, how is that? Okay, when you involve a UX designer to come in and do usability testing and user research with the target market on what a product is supposed to, who the product is supposed to be intended for, we now take all the guesswork out. So as before, as a graphic designer, doing a lot of these designs, a lot of it was just guesswork. We launch it, we hope it works. Now the guesswork is so minuscule, right? Because our research is so thorough, it almost is a guarantee that when we design something, we know it's going to work. Why? Because we already have the feedback. There's two sides to this design, Mel. It's the user feedback to design something we know the users will want and need and use on a consistent basis, and the best practices that make the usability of that thing absolutely usable. Without those two components, it's destined for failure. Absolutely.
Wow. Wow. Okay, well, you want to jump into the landscape of UX?
Yeah. So there's a number of elements that UX designers involve ourselves with. Interface, navigation. I want to focus on the user research piece and the accessibility. Why? Because these are the elements that drive how our users are going to make informed decisions with whatever the product is, whether it's an internal software platform that a client is building, whether it is a website to convert, and we're going to show some examples, or whether it's an actual device, a product, or a consumable. Okay, all of these things, we need to make sure that our research validates what users are going to experience. And then we've got very specific ways in which we can optimize that experience. And that's kind of the fun part. So
wow,
when we developed the auditing service offering for STG, we wanted to answer these questions. And how does your site perform across proven UX best practice guidelines? Now, these are like web conventions. So what I did was I split up the best practice guidelines by importance, by frequency, and severity. So I created these cards that highlighted certain best practice guidelines. So like in this case, this example, highlight the current scope in the main navigation. That's number 300. Now, the number of the guideline is not relevant to any of our clients. They don't care what number it is. They may not even care what we title it. But they do need to know that what the importance, the frequency, and the severity of this guideline is. So when we do an audit, we're showing our clients how well are they adhering or violating that guideline on their site. And so this adherence high is a green. If it was a violation high, it'd be red. And we're going to show some examples. Okay, so I fine-tuned the guidelines by the most essential, the lowest cost to implement to our clients, and that would have the highest impact on their customers. And so,
and how many? You said there's like 2,000.
There's over 2,000 guidelines.
So when you go in and do an audit, will you actually cover all of them?
We can.
Majority of them?
We
quarter
can.
of them?
We can. So that would be a very comprehensive audit, and we certainly can do that. For this focus, initially we'll get an introductory kind of approach with a client by focusing just on these three elements: the most essential, the lowest cost to implement, and the highest impact on the user. That isolates the best practice guidelines to about 110 from 21 plus 100. Okay. Wow. And so, again, I gauge them by importance, frequency, and severity. And you can see, are they essential? Is the importance of this guideline essential? Like, if we don't do this, we're going to lose a user. They will drop off, okay? How impactful is it? Is it a detail? Is it something that would be like a tertiary priority? On the frequency, how often is this occurring on the site? On the severity, is it just interrupting the user's flow? Is it disruptive to their flow, to the intended flow of the sales funnel or the conversion rate or the bounce rate? Or is it harmful? Harmful would be, really detrimental, where not only are we losing a sale, we could be causing permanent brand damage. And so how are we going to know that? We assess the audit by these guidelines.
Okay.
Another question we ask is where could your site improve by optimizing sales funnels and macro conversion rates? We look at that in the audit. Which ad campaign lever do you pull to reduce bounce rates? We take a look at all the data, click rate data, Google Analytics, in order to assess those aspects in the audit. How at risk might your site be for possible non-compliance to ADA standards and expensive legal litigation? This is coming up. In fact, one of the examples I'm going to show is for a client that came to us in the midst of an ADA non-compliance litigation lawsuit.
Wow.
And we were able to help mitigate that risk for that client. And lastly, how does your site perform against your industry competitors? So not only can we do an audit on our client sites, we can also help them do a competitive audit on their competitors and see where their competitors are missing opportunities that our clients can now leverage for better sales.
Very good.
And create better brand loyal advocates. So these are the next area that we're going to focus on is what we actually audit. We start with the homepage. We do category navigation. We audit their on-site search, product lists, filtering, product detail pages, the checkout process, customer accounts. We can even do mobile specific, whether a client has a specific app or their site is responsive. How does the mobile version of their site perform? And order tracking, returns, and things like that.
It's interesting. One thing that really impressed me when you and I were talking back about a month ago is how, some of the things you've said here definitely are very focused toward e-commerce, but the concepts work for any type of system.
Yes.
E-commerce and the study of UX in that realm, according to what you were sharing with me, really informs anything.
That's right.
Like if I think about like some of the systems I've worked on, I've worked in the dental software business, I've worked in employee recognition. Obviously that's not e-commerce, but yet conversion or completing a task or completing an activity is the objective. And so you can still use that same mindset, that same approach, given the audit structure and whatnot.
That's right.
That was really impressive to me to kind of think that how much crossover there is. So even though you may not have a direct e-commerce site, the value of this audit can work in whatever software solution you're working with.
I'm glad you brought that up, Mel. Just as I believe UX is everywhere, I also believe that every site, whatever their sector is always has something to do with e-commerce. And this is why. So there is e-commerce, right? Amazon, Nike, Target, Walmart. Those are e-commerce. Every website that everyone wants to sell their own merch on, that's e-commerce. You also have government sites. You have education. You have nonprofit sectors. Okay, all of those are still having the objective of either raising money, doing some type of a conversion, okay, getting people to pay a tuition or a donation, right? Or to, be in compliance in some way. All of that still relates, even in those sectors, it still relates to the pioneering best practice guidelines that have been established in e-commerce. These guidelines, were established mainly with e-commerce in mind, but they definitely cross over into these other sectors.
That's great.
They started with e-commerce because that's where the money is. You know, when you have Amazon budgeting, you know, $500,000 on an A/B test to see, you know, where the buy now button should be, you know, yellow or green,
Or location of the screen.
or the location of the screen, okay, they're fine tuning it to micro levels in order to initiate, you know, significant conversion rates.
Wow.
Yeah. Next, I want to cover what our audits are actually for. You know, sites that want to ensure their UX performance stacks up against their competitors as best in class. There is a bit of pride to say when we look at sites and all the sites that I've evaluated over the years, there are sites that jump out as best in class, and they're nationally known as best in class. Like Home Depot, for example, rates very highly for their checkout process, for their product detail pages, and the way that they've designed things. We also look at sites that need validation on new redesigns. Auditing prototype designs is less expensive than recoding. So it behooves our clients to utilize this service offering to be able to see how their redesigns are going to perform before they go the distance of involving developers to spend, you know, weeks if not months coding.
Yeah, and from my experience, you know, leading engineering teams, this is where I've seen high value from really good UX professionals, where they understand how to do, you know, the design, of course, but also the research and flow and conversion analysis, you know, long before it ever gets into a backlog or written as a user story for a developer to code. And the amount of cost savings there is enormous.
Enormous. We're going to get into ROI in just a sec. Yep, you're right.
That's great.
We're also ensuring successful site launches and or redesigns by combining our research data with UX best practice guidelines. We're optimizing sites with external unbiased UX auditor eyes, okay, like myself, to identify tweaks and improvements that maybe internal teams are either not familiar with or biased to or blinded to by staring at the same thing for months, right?
Yeah, and I can't overstate enough. I mean, you know, whatever industry you're in, there's huge value in periodically having somebody come in independent to review things, to give you that you know, third eye perspective, to help you see what you may not be seeing. You know, that I've seen that in this world, especially where designers and product managers, for example, get so mired in, you know, the day-to-day that they need to kind of almost step back and have somebody help bring kind of a bit of a refresh. You know, hey, we can see what you're doing here. You need to also be thinking about these.
That's right.
Other activities as well. That's great.
And lastly, you know, we want sites that want to track year-over-year performance. So we can do an initial audit, say before a launch, and then after a year, do another audit to see how we're performing, where tweaks can always be made and improvements can always be made, and measure and document the UX progress towards stakeholder priorities over time. That's critically important. And we're very efficient at what we do. I really enjoy this. It's a sniper approach, and I get in and like quick and dirty. The next piece is about kind of performance. UX audit reports, we identify certain features, specific areas where your site is adhering or again violating, establish user expectations. It's fun to do user research and discover what users' expectations are. And sometimes that can be kind of eye-opening to stakeholders and the executives that are wanting to push the deadline to get a product to launch, and yet when we come in, we can discover things that maybe they didn't see before. Missed opportunities. We can educate, guide, and convert those potential customers. How is your site performing against leaders in your industry, not just your competitors? And how to assure your potential customers can make informed purchasing decisions. We also want to clearly understand the value UX has in positively influencing conversion rates and revenues. Data-driven decisions help clients design comprehensive solutions that assure competitive positioning. And confident ADA standards. That compliance helps mitigate possible risk, like we talked about earlier. The return on investment for UX, I think, is here's an example of a prior client. They were a Dell type client. We discovered through research that they had a buy now on the checkout page. Users were going to a checkout page, and they realized that the buy now was pushed off first view. And so they thought by seeing the review of what they went to the checkout with, they had already entered their information, that it was like a receipt page.
They thought they had purchased.
They thought they were completed with the purchase, okay? And they left the site. Okay, so this is called a site abandonment. So not only did they think they made the order, they're now waiting for the order that hasn't been made, and then they call customer service. So now this is a customer service issue. And they call customer service. Customer service has no record of the order. And now we've created a permanent brand damage issue. Wow. We went in with this data, and we moved the buy now to the top. Common sense, intuitive maneuver. It took developers 20 minutes to do it. And in that year one, they made over 10 million in revenue. So we know that we can validate the value of UX audits pretty clearly. I'm going to show an example here. This is with a client, Walding Wild Beds out of St. George. With their permission, we did an audit for them earlier. And this is an example of what our audit looks like. I come in and I take a look at this site, and I place those cards throughout the site based on where they're adhering high or adhering low, whether they're violating low or they're violating high. And so here's an example where, like on 427, always allow users to combine multiple filter options of the same filter type. So you'll notice where it says Studio Series, these little icons next to the title there, these icons were supposed to indicate filter types, but all of those filters were just icons. They were not active. They had no label to them. They were inactive. So they served no purpose. They helped the user in absolutely no way. If they weren't familiar with what those icons meant, then they were completely lost. So this was a high violation. We were suggesting to the client that they either label the icons and or make them active to allow users to initiate filter options in order to further delineate what their search needed to be in order to make a more informed decision in an efficient way. We also did an accessibility score, and this showed their performance and their accessibility. And you could see like their total blocking time was at 630 milliseconds, extremely high. Their largest contentful paint was 15.8 seconds, extremely high. And then below this, we can see contrast errors. We can see empty links. We can see empty buttons. This made any user who might have been visually impaired, hearing impaired, or cognitively impaired at risk at not being able to find the information that they needed in a timely way. It also puts the site at risk for an ADA noncompliance litigation. Another example here, our final example that I'll go over is with Deco TV frames. They're out of Florida. They're a Samsung dealer. They make these art frames that go around the Samsung TV, and they also sell art chips that you can like plug into the TV, and then your TV is basically a canvas, and it dynamically changes the art on the page. Right, it's pretty cool, right?
That's very cool.
Well, they were in the midst of an ADA non-compliance litigation suit, and they came to us to get advice on how to improve their site so they could mitigate that risk. And this is another example of what we did to dive in to help their audit. I'm going to highlight just one piece here, and that was to style the price to be highly visible. You'll see right under the ornate silver, it's this tiny little amount.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
$2.99.
Yep.
Tiny.
Barely see that. Okay. That may have been possibly a 16-point type. Okay. Or smaller, could have been 12, but that's not large enough for a user to quickly and easily see how much is this product and can I make a decision on that. So we, of course, suggested, and I even show an example, and this example shows how prominent the price should be right below the UX Audit best practice card. And then another example here was with their reviews. You'll notice that they were using a third party. This little icon right here it says powered by I think it's Yotpo, and that's a third party review system that a lot of our clients use. And we run into problems when our clients are using third party sources on their site, because now we're limited to what their platform allows. Mm-hmm. And many of these other platforms don't take into consideration UX best practice guidelines. And so we have to either go to the third party vendor and say, hey, we need you to change this, or we have to come up with a custom solution. The reason this was important was none of these, in this case, none of these review stars were selectable. They were simply images. Okay, so it showed a star, it showed like how many reviews, but none of those actually linked to a review section for the user to be able to inspect the star ratings or the reviews. And so this was a critical piece. And then where they did it high here was they were responsive to low reviews. If they got a low score, they were quick to respond and try to resolve the concern. That actually increased their Google Analytics score. So this is just a really quick snapshot, a high-level view of what we're able to do with UX audits. And we're excited to be able to provide this to our clients and to help them optimize internal, external platforms, mobile sites, e-commerce, whatever their platform is, whatever their sector is. This is what we enjoy.
That's awesome. Well, Jared, this has been fantastic. Every time I talk with you, I always walk away with more knowledge and absolutely impressed. I'm sure the folks who are watching today feel the same. I love working with you for lots of reasons, but your ability to come in and make sense of things quickly, your demeanor to work with people in ways that help kind of build them up, and one thing we take a lot of pride in at STG is we want to do our work, but we also want to do it right. Like we want to be right with people, and I love the way that you go about your work and helping to build people up. It's really impressive. For future topics, because we're definitely going to come back to UX on a number of occasions in the future and talk about virtual reality, augmented reality, user experience in the AI world, and some voice technology. So we look forward to some future webinars.
That'll be
as well.
fun.
So
I look forward to
seriously,
it.
thank you for your time today.
Thanks for the compliments, Mel. I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure.
We'll pause now this recording, and then we'll take some Q&A from everybody. And we really appreciate everybody's time with us today. Thank you.
We hope you found value in today's webinar. If you wish to delve deeper into how STG can contribute to the innovation and optimization of your organization, please visit our website at stgconsulting.com for more information. Thank you for being with us today. We wish you a fantastic day ahead.